This is HFY Vanguard, where one human's defiance can shake empires. He refused to pay the bill and taught the galaxy the price of equality. The legend begins now. The spires of Zeo Station pierce the void like needles of light, each tower a monument to a civilization's ego. From orbit, the station shimmered a rotating crown of metal and glass hanging above a crimson gas giant, haloed by debris fields that sparkled like constellations. It was said that on Exio, every species brought its best and worst traits to trade. That made it both the most civilized and the most dangerous place in the Orion Arm. Cale Mercer had dreamed of this moment since childhood, stepping onto an alien world as humanity's voice. Yet now that he was here, his chest tightened. The shuttle's descent burned through the thin upper atmosphere of the station metal, shrieking around him, and with every vibration he felt smaller against the immensity of space. When the hatch opened, the scent hit him first, a cocktail of ozone spices, pheromones, and recycled oxygen. The air was sweet in a way Earth's never was, tasting faintly of electricity and fruit. He took his first breath on Scio and almost coughed. First time off-world. The customs officer had blue skin like polished stone and 4 eyes blinking in an alternating rhythm. His tone was halfway between suspicion and amusement. That obvious Cale asked, forcing a grin. Humans always look like they're holding their breath. Welcome to the melting pot, Terran. Try not to start a war. The stamp clacked against his travel slate, a sound both bureaucratic and final. Cale stepped through the gates, his boots clicking on alloy flooring engraved with alien runes. 1,000 voices rose and fell around him, whispers, screeches, musical tones, and machine chatter. Creatures of every imaginable shape passed him, winged, scaled, luminous, or barely corporeal, each moving with the practiced arrogance of one who belonged. He unmistakably did not. For months, the Terran Diplomatic Corps had drilled him on alien etiquette, how not to bare his teeth around predators, how to bow with the correct spinal angle, how to avoid offering his left hand to species that considered it obscene. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the sensory overload of living civilization condensed into one place. A ping from his wristcom interrupted his awe. Cultural immersion begins immediately. Contact Kira of Zydonia. Location, the Stellar Terrace. Don't mess this up, Mercer. He exhaled. Classic Christie, his superior back at the embassy, always believed in encouragement through intimidation. The transit tube whisked him through glowing tunnels that framed the stars like stained glass. Advertisements in dozens of languages flickered across the walls, holograms selling dream sequences, genetic enhancements, and things that might have been companionship. A jingle in a language of clicks followed him long after he exited. When the doors parted, he stepped into the Stellar Terrace, and the view stole his words. The restaurant clung to the outer ring of the station, open to the cosmos behind a shimmering force field. Beyond it stretched the infinite swirling nebula and silent fleets drifting like silver fish. That was when he saw her. Kira Vexinar, cultural attaché of Zydonia, was sat beneath an orange umbrella that glowed softly against her skin the color of molten copper polished by starlight. Her hair, pale as liquid silver, cascaded in intricate braids down her back, each strand tipped with a tiny crystal that caught the light. Even sitting still, she radiated motion like a flame too disciplined to flicker. Her outfit didn't help his focus. A dark green leather bodysuit hugged her form with unapologetic precision, armored along the spine with faintly glowing ridges. Around her neck hung a golden pendant, shaped like spread wings pulsing faintly with her heartbeat. She turned her amber eyes toward him before he even introduced himself. Those eyes locked onto his like targeting sensors and smiled. "You must be Cale Mercer," she said, voice melodic, the accent bending his name into something softer. "I was beginning to think humans measured time differently." "We do." Mostly in minutes of embarrassment, he replied, sliding into the seat opposite her. Her lips curved. "For a species barely out of its gravity well, you adapt quickly." The translator embedded in his ear rendered her words perfectly, but her tone carried more nuanced challenge wrapped in honey. "We learn fast," Cale said. "That's why they sent me. To learn." "And what will you learn first, I wonder," she asked. He was still thinking of a witty reply when a waiter approached a gray-skinned alien with the classic bulbous head of Earth's old UFO myths. The irony wasn't lost on him. Chef Rin Kira greeted with effortless familiarity. We'll have the Aldebaran flame-seared tentacles and a nebula cloud dessert. Kale didn't protest. Curiosity outweighed hesitation. The chef bowed 6 fingers working in hypnotic precision over his hovering stove. Blue fire danced, and the smell of sizzling spices filled the air. As they waited, Kira studied him openly, chin propped on her hand. Tell me about Earth, she said. Is it true your species still fights wars among itself? He hesitated. Not large-scale ones anymore. Old habits die hard. Fascinating, she mused. Most species achieve unity before reaching the stars. Humans remain fragmented, yet you advance. Maybe chaos fuels innovation, he offered. Or arrogance. The barb was light but deliberate. Kale smiled without flinching. We call it optimism. Her eyes glinted. Optimism is arrogance that hasn't failed yet. Before he could reply, the chef returned presenting 2 dishes that looked like art installations. The tentacles glimmered with iridescent sauce. The dessert floated above the plate like a captive cloud. Kale mimicking her posture, carefully copying her eating technique. The flavor hit like electric fire, part mango, part metal, ending in a sweet burn that watered his eyes. You handle the spice well, she noted. Most off-worlders gasp. I grew up in New Mexico. We season our food with pride and regret. For the first time, she laughed genuinely, a sound like chimes struck by wind. Their conversation drifted from cuisine to art to philosophy. Kale found himself genuinely enjoying her company. Beneath the arrogance, she was sharp-witty curious. Her every gesture spoke of someone used to control and surprise to find herself intrigued. He almost forgot that she represented a species who saw humans as clever children playing with sharp toys. When the last bite disappeared, the waiter returned with a glowing tablet. Kale reached for it automatically. Let's see what damage we did. Kira froze. The faint hum of conversation around them dimmed. What are you doing? Checking the bill, he said. You intend to calculate your portion? Her voice lowered, disbelief dripping from every syllable. Sure, or we can split it. I'll get this one, you can grab the next. The silence that followed was heavy enough to warp gravity. The chef blinked twice and slowly backed away. Real males always procrastinate food, she said. Finally tone sharp as a blade, it is a biological imperative, not a social custom. Kale blinked. Courtship. Her amber eyes widened, realization dawning that he truly didn't understand. Around them nearby, diners turned subtly to watch. The moment was already escaping containment, slipping into the digital gossip streams. This is not how partnership works, she hissed. On Earth, he countered, keeping his voice calm equals share expenses. It's a sign of respect. Her ears flattened a Zidonian expression of anger. And on Zidonia, males prove worth by providing. To suggest otherwise is to deny nature itself. Cameras clicked. Somewhere a drone light turned red, recording live. Kale exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. Maybe nature has room for an upgrade, he said quietly. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The space between them crackled not with hostility anymore, but something stranger, more volatile. Her pendant pulsed faster light, flashing like a heartbeat out of sync. He realized belatedly that he was staring not at her anger, but at the curve of her collarbone glowing beneath the pendant's shimmer. Ambassador Christie's gonna kill me, he muttered under his breath. Kira tilted her head. Perhaps, or perhaps you've just changed the galaxy's definition of dinner. And in that single quiet instant, with the stars burning silently beyond the force field and the camera drones circling like vultures, a simple Terran misunderstanding detonated across the Orion Arm, destined to become the most infamous dinner in interstellar history. The scandal hadn't exploded yet, but the air already felt like static before a storm. Kale Mercer stood on the balcony of his embassy quarters, the artificial night of Zio Station humming beyond the glass. Tiny ships streaked across the void like glowing veins. Every civilization's pulse beat here, and tonight he could feel his own sync with it, uneasy, rapid, alive. He replayed the dinner in his mind, wincing at the memory of Kira's stunned face when he mentioned splitting the bill. Real males provide food, she'd said. The words rang like a slap. Somewhere between ancient instinct and modern pride, 2 worlds had collided, and he was standing in the wreckage. His comm unit buzzed. Ambassador Christie. Mercer, I hope you realize you've just offended half the Zidonian Empire. I realize it now, Kale said dryly. We're already getting inquiries from Galactic Newsnet. You're trending under the tag, #primitive equality. Congratulations, you're famous for being a feminist in space. It's not feminism, it's decency. Try explaining that to a species that considers providing food sacred ritual. The High Council is demanding clarification. You'll attend a joint conference tomorrow. With her. The line went dead. Kale rubbed his face, muttering to no one. First mission off Earth, and I've already started a holy war over dinner. He barely slept. When he finally met Kira Vexnar again the next evening, the stellar terrace was cordoned off for private diplomatic engagement. Holographic curtains shimmered around their table, filtering the curious eyes of the galaxy. She arrived like she owned gravity. Her hair was now swept up in a high braid threaded with metallic cords. Her bodysuit had been replaced with formal diplomatic attire, sleek emerald fabric that caught the light like liquid metal. The pendant still rested against her throat, glowing faintly in time with her pulse. "Mr. Mercer," she said coolly, sitting opposite him. "Or should I call you the equality revolutionary? If you must insult me, at least make it sound heroic," he replied. "Oh, it's heroic, all right," she said, eyes narrowing. "Half of Zidonia thinks you're barbaric. The other half thinks you're charmingly insane. That's progress, I suppose." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table, the golden lines of her wristbands catching the starlight. "Do you humans enjoy confrontation this much?" "Only when it's educational." "You think this was education?" "For me, absolutely. For the galaxy, maybe." Her laughter was soft but edged. "You are unlike any male I have ever met." "I get that a lot." Kira tilted her head. "Most males apologize when they offend me." "And does that work?" "Always." "Then maybe it's time someone didn't." The silence that followed was charged, not hostile, more like the moment before lightning touches ground. Her amber eyes gleamed, assessing, amused. "You're bold human." "You're dangerous," he countered. "That's a compliment." A faint smile curved her lips, but her voice softened. "You truly didn't know our dinner was a courtship ritual, did you?" "Not a clue. I thought it was a meeting." On Zidonia, sharing food is the first step of partnership. To invite someone to eat is to test compatibility, nutritional, biological, even emotional. Kale blinked. "You're telling me dinner is basically interspecies Tinder?" Kira frowned, not understanding the reference. "If this Tinder involves ritualized evaluation of potential mates, then yes." He exhaled, torn between amusement and disbelief. "Great. So my first diplomatic dinner was a blind date. Your ignorance may be your only saving grace," she said, but her voice had lost some of its frost. "You acted out of principle, not insult. That's rare. On Earth, it's normal. On Zidonia, it's rebellion." Their eyes met across the table again. For the first time, Kira's gaze softened, not condescending, not superior, but curious. The waiter brought drinks this time, shimmering golden liquid that emitted faint heat. Kira explained it was Zidonian fire wine brewed to match the drinker's body chemistry. She watched him take a sip, clearly waiting for a reaction. "It burns sweet, electric, and alive." "You handle our cuisine well," she said. "Perhaps too well." "Guess I'm adaptable." Adaptability, she mused, is how weaker species survive among predators. He met her gaze, or how smart ones evolve. Her smile widened, perhaps both. They drank in silence for a while. Outside the force field, a fleet of cargo ships drifted by, their hulls reflecting blue nebula light. Kira followed them with her eyes, her expression distant. "You know," she said softly, "I was trained to study humans long before we met. Your people fascinate us. You rise too fast, change too easily. You build alliances through emotion instead of logic. You say that like it's a flaw. It's dangerous. You threaten the order of older civilizations without even realizing it." Kale leaned back. "Maybe the universe needs a little disorder." Kira's gaze returned to him, and for a heartbeat, the diplomat vanished, leaving a woman who looked genuinely intrigued. Their communits chimed simultaneously, a shared alert from the Galactic Newsnet. Kira frowned and tapped her wrist console. A holographic window opened between them, projecting the feed. Headline: "Human male refuses to provide food. Zidonian customs mocked in public." Subheader: "Real males always provide food" becomes viral slogan across 17 systems. The footage showed their dinner, edited zoom sensationalized. Kale's confused expression had been looped beside Kira's outrage for dramatic effect. The broadcast played with translations in multiple languages, all framed as comedy. Kira's eyes widened. They made it entertainment. "Welcome to human diplomacy," Kale muttered. The universe has a sense of humor. This isn't humor, she hissed. This is humiliation. He watched her fist clenched knuckles pale against orange skin. You're right, he said quietly. But maybe we can turn it into something else. Like what? An opportunity. To what? Teach the galaxy how to split bills. To show them what it means. Her eyes narrowed. You intend to defend your behavior? No, he said. I intend to defend my species. Kira rose abruptly, pacing to the edge of the terrace. Beyond the force field, a nebula glowed fiery red tendrils curling through black space. She stared at it as if searching for patience. You are impossible, she said at last. So I've been told. She turned to face him again, hair catching the faint wind from the ventilation ducts. Do you ever stop pushing boundaries, human? Not when they're worth pushing. Something flickered behind her gaze. Anger, admiration, desire. Maybe all three. You could destroy everything I've built here, she warned. The council sees this as proof that humans don't respect order. Or maybe he said, standing, they'll see that we respect choice. They stood close now, closer than diplomacy allowed. The faint hum of the energy field vibrated in the air between them. Kira's breath hitched. You speak as if equality is a weapon. Sometimes Kale murmured, it has to be. For a long moment, neither moved. The galaxy outside spun in silence. Her pendant glowed brighter, pulsing with something alive. She seemed to feel it too, the current between them, biological or otherwise. You really believe you're right, don't you? I believe we both are, he said. We just use different languages to say it. Her expression softened, but her voice dropped an octave, velvety and dangerous. Perhaps there is a way to translate properly. He blinked. Translate what? She smiled, a slow, knowing curve. Meaning, intention, biology. Before he could respond, she reached forward and touched his wrist. Her fingers were warmer than human skin, almost burning. The moment stretched, and he felt a flicker inside his mind, like someone brushing his thoughts. He inhaled sharply. What was that? A glimpse, she said. Zidonian empathy bond. A way to understand without words. You just read me. No, I felt you. Her voice was almost a whisper. And you felt me. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They stood there under alien stars, two diplomats, two ideologies, two nervous systems now entangled. Somewhere beyond them, data feeds and political rumors swirled through the galaxy, building a storm neither could yet see. But here in this moment, the universe had narrowed to a pulse, hers and his, overlapping in rhythm, burning hotter than any argument. Tomorrow, Kira said, finally stepping back. Though her gaze lingered, you and I will stand before the Galactic Council. You will explain your philosophy, and you will not embarrass me again. Kale managed a grin. I'll do my best. Your best nearly started a cultural war. Then imagine what happens when I really try. Kira shook her head, but a faint smile betrayed her irritation. You are either humanity's greatest diplomat or its final mistake. Why not both? She turned to leave, silver hair catching the light. At the threshold, she paused. You should rest, Kale Mercer. Tomorrow the galaxy will be watching. As the door closed behind her, Kale exhaled and looked out through the transparent wall. The stars burned in distant silence, indifferent, eternal, and somewhere among them, a single misunderstanding had just become history. When morning came on Zio Station, it wasn't dawn that woke Kale Mercer. It was the sound of his own name echoing across the galactic net. Human diplomat refuses to provide food for mate. Zidonian outrage explodes and had real males provide food. Trending on 27 worlds is equality, the new barbarism. Every news drone in orbit replayed the same moment, Kale's confused grin, Kira's horrified stare, the build tablet glowing between them like a weapon. Someone had slowed the footage to emphasize the awkward pause right before she'd said it. Real males provide food. By the time he reached the Terran Embassy briefing room, Ambassador Christie looked like she'd aged 10 years. Mercer, do you understand what you've done? She demanded, pacing before the projection of 10 furious alien ambassadors. Started a cultural dialogue. You started a religious crisis. The holo display flickered with incoming headlines. Zidonia's High Council had called for formal clarification of Terran courtship values. Protests had broken out on several neutral stations, half mocking, half outraged. Vendors were already selling shirts that read, "Split the bill, split the galaxy." Christie sighed. You're going to apologize on record at the Joint Press Summit, and Kira Vexnar will stand beside you. Great, I'll bring flowers. Don't. In her culture, that's a funeral gesture. He closed his mouth. This was going to be a long day. The galactic press hall glimmered like a temple of judgment. Reporters floated in anti-grav pods, drones, word holographic banners, rippled in 23 languages. Kira stood beside him at the podium, radiant and furious. Her diplomatic robe shimmered with green and gold, and her pendant glowed in furious pulses. "I still don't understand why you refuse to let me pay," she whispered without looking at him. "Because where I'm from, equality matters. And where I'm from, generosity defines strength. Maybe the galaxy needs both." She said nothing, but her jaw tightened. The press conference began. The moderator, a crystalline being from Vesh Prime, spoke through musical chimes. "We are gathered to address the incident now referred to as the Split the Bill affair. Ambassador Christie, would you clarify Earth's stance?" Before Christie could respond, a dozen reporters shouted questions. Does humanity reject the sacred provider role? Is the Terran male population infertile? Was this an insult or courtship failure? Kale pinched the bridge of his nose. This was absurd. He leaned into the mic. "Let me clarify. On Earth, sharing cost means sharing respect. It means partnership." A wave of murmurs rippled through the hall. Kira's amber eyes flashed. And on Zidonia, a male's ability to provide demonstrates his capacity to sustain life. It's evolutionary, not symbolic. "Then maybe evolution needs a sense of humor," he muttered. A dozen translators immediately converted the line into 20 dialects, each one slightly different, some ironic, some insulting. Within seconds, alien reporters were gasping, arguing and recording. Ambassador Christie buried her face in her hands. The confrontation went viral in real time. By the time Kale left the podium, his face was plastered across every holoscreen in the promenade. A popular news feed titled the segment, "The Human Who Refused Destiny." Kira caught up with him in the corridor, eyes blazing. "You mock sacred values before the entire council." "I mock stupidity, not values. You don't understand what you've challenged." "Then explain it to me." She stopped breathing hard. Around them, a few curious passers-by paused to watch the spectacle of a human and a Zidonian arguing inches apart. "Our entire mating hierarchy is based on provision," she said sharply. "The hunt, the meal, the offering, they are rituals older than our written history. To deny them is to deny what we are." "Maybe that's the problem," Kale said softly. "You've been what you were for too long." Her lips parted, not in anger this time, but shock. "You think tradition makes us weak? I think it keeps you from seeing what strength could become." They were close now, too close. The temperature of the corridor seemed to rise. Even the air recyclers hummed slower. "You're insufferable," she whispered. "You're magnificent," he said without meaning to. For a second, the fight died in her eyes, replaced by something far more dangerous. "Your quarters are mine?" she asked, voice low enough that only he could hear. He blinked. "What?" "To continue the debate. That's what we're calling it now." She turned on her heel, walking toward the diplomatic sector without another word. He followed, cursing under his breath and grinning despite himself. Kale's quarters were small but sleek, lined with glass panels showing the spinning nebula outside. As the doors sealed behind them, the silence was electric. "You really believe everything should be equal?" she asked, circling him like a predator. "I believe respect should go both ways." "Then respect this." She reached out and pressed her fingers to his temple. A jolt shot through him. Heat memory sensation. Images flashed behind his eyes, alien jungles, star hunts, the thrill of pursuit. When he blinked, she was right in front of him, chest rising fast. "That's empathy bonding," she said. "Now you feel what I feel." "That's cheating." "It's education." He laughed, a breathless, disbelieving sound, and she smiled for the first time since the scandal began. "You're not angry?" she asked. "I'm furious and fascinated." Then before either of them could rationalize it, the argument dissolved into motion. Heat met heat. The line between challenge and desire blurred, and for a while there were no words, only the universal grammar of touch, breath, surrender, defiance. When silence returned, they were tangled in sheets, the stars outside rotating slowly past the window. "Congratulations," she murmured. "You've just committed an act of interspecies diplomacy." He smiled, half asleep. "Glad to serve humanity." "Don't joke. The biochemical bond is real now. I can sense your emotions for the next solar cycle. So you'll know when I'm nervous. And when you lie. Then we're in trouble." She chuckled, a warm alien sound that vibrated through his chest. The comm console buzzed. Ambassador Christie's voice burst into the room like cold water. Mercer, the Zidonian embassy, just filed a formal protest. They claim you seduced their cultural attaché during an active negotiation. Kira rolled onto her side, unfazed. Technically accurate, she said. Tell me that's not true, Christie snapped. It's complicated, Kale said. It's catastrophic. High Counselor Thax is demanding a public statement in 1 hour. And you're both attending the emergency reception to prove this was, God help me, a cultural misunderstanding. Kira smirked. She's right. We should make it convincing. Kale groaned. You're enjoying this, of course. For once, diplomacy is interesting. An hour later, the grand reception hall of Exio shimmered with diplomats and dignitaries. Tension clung to the air like static before a storm. At the far end of the chamber, High Counselor, Thax tall, severe, silver-haired, stood like judgment incarnate. Ambassador Christie introduced them quickly, voice tight. High Counselor, this is Cale Mercer, the human involved in the incident. Thax's gaze was cold enough to freeze a sunbeam. The male who refused the sacred exchange. Cale bowed slightly. No disrespect was intended, Counselor. Only misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Thax repeated, tone dripping disdain. Your action questions the very foundation of our mating code. The galaxy watches and laughs. Kira stepped forward. High Counselor, with respect, humanity's customs differ from ours. Their equality is not rebellion, it's a reflection of shared worth. Spoken like one already compromised, Thax said sharply, his gaze flicking between them. Kale's temper flared. If by compromised you mean enlightened, then yes. Gasps rippled through the hall. Ambassador Christie shot him a look that screamed, shut up. But Kale continued louder now. Every civilization starts by dividing power, male and female, strong and weak, ruler and ruled. Humanity learned the hard way that division breeds destruction. Maybe what you call chaos is simply the next stage of evolution. The hall fell silent. Even Thax hesitated, studying him with something between fury and curiosity. Kira stepped beside him, her hand brushing his, a gesture subtle but unmistakable. Perhaps there is merit in examining these perspectives, she said smoothly. We could turn conflict into cooperation. A cultural exchange initiative to explore how traditions evolve across species. The murmurs grew louder, shifting from outrage to intrigue. Christie seized the moment. An excellent proposal. Let this misunderstanding become education. Thax frowned, but the political tide had turned. The council will consider it, he said at last. As the crowd dispersed, Kira leaned toward Kale, voice barely above a whisper. You do realize you just invented a galactic doctrine out of thin air. I call it improvisational diplomacy. You call it survival, she corrected. They both laughed quietly, breathlessly, while the universe argued about them in the background. Outside, the hollow feeds already flashed new headlines. Human equality sparks cultural exchange movement. From scandal to solution, the Mercer Doctrine. Kira squeezed his hand, her pendant glowing faintly against her skin. You may have changed more than dinner customs, Cale Mercer. Good, he said, because I was getting tired of just being the guy who didn't pay the bill. They stood together as the crowd swirled around them, a Terran and a Zidonian, two mismatched souls at the center of a storm, unaware that the next phase of their story would decide whether the galaxy burned or learned. The reception hall still shimmered with the echoes of applause long after the crowd dispersed. What had started as a scandal had turned into a tentative bridge, thin, trembling, and shining with fragile hope. Yet Cale Mercer knew that one wrong step could still send everything crashing down. He exhaled and loosened the stiff collar of his diplomatic uniform. Across the room, Kira Vexnar spoke with a cluster of Zidonian aides, her voice low and measured. Even now, even after their near-public disaster, she radiated control. Every motion of her hands seemed deliberate, calculated, a choreography of authority. And yet, when her eyes met his from across the room, the control cracked just slightly. The bond between them pulsed invisible but undeniable. She excused herself from her colleagues and crossed the floor. The sound of her boots on the marble echoed like heartbeats. You survived, she said quietly, coming to stand beside him. Barely, he replied. Christie's probably drafting my obituary. It would make a fascinating epitaph, she murmured. He died for equality, holding a dinner receipt. Cale laughed under his breath. I'll make sure that's engraved on my tombstone. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. You impress Thax, she admitted. That's not easy. He doesn't respect anyone who bleeds. Then he'll hate me twice over. No, he respects survival. You turned offense into dialogue. Zydonia respects cunning even when we pretend not to. There was a pause. Between them, the hum of the great hall seemed to fade, replaced by the rhythm of two mismatched heartbeats sinking through their biochemical link. You feel it too, she said, almost a whisper. The bond, she nodded, fingers brushing the pendant at her throat. It's stronger than I expected. Our species use it rarely to link soldiers in combat or lovers. And what are we? He asked, voice low. Her amber eyes met his, something dangerously in between. They walked the long corridor back to the diplomatic sector together. The artificial night of Zio Station wrapped around them, the glow of distant stars filtering through transparent walls. Kale broke the silence. So this bond, what does it mean exactly? It amplifies shared emotion. Empathy, attraction, fear. It was designed for unity and conflict. Unity who sounds useful for interstellar politics. Or disastrous, she countered. If one of us loses control, the other feels it. That explains the headache. She glanced sideways at him, headache. Every time you get angry, it feels like someone's lighting a match in my skull. A small, delighted laugh escaped her. Good. Then you'll think twice before provoking me again. Unlikely. They reached his quarters. The door slid open with a quiet hiss. He hesitated. You could come in, to talk strategy, I mean. Strategy, she repeated, voice rich with disbelief. Purely professional. Then you're safe. I'm feeling unprofessional. Still, she followed him inside. The room was dim, the nebula outside spilling orange-blue light across the walls. Kale poured 2 glasses of water from the dispenser, no alien liquor this time. The last thing he needed was to explain another incident. Kira moved to the viewport, arms folded behind her back, watching the slow spin of distant ships. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, elegant, dangerous, beautiful. Your species is obsessed with windows, she said. You always need to see what's beyond. Maybe it's how we remind ourselves we don't belong here yet. And yet you push forward anyway, even when every other species tells you you're not ready. He joined her by the window. If we waited for permission, we'd still be crawling in the mud. That arrogance is why you fascinate us, and why you terrify us. Her voice softened, almost reverent. You rise faster than logic allows. You make chaos look like destiny. He turned toward her. And you make order look seductive. The bond between them flared, a rush of heat under his skin. He could feel her heartbeat, not hear it, but feel it echoing through that invisible link. Kira, he said, barely audible. Careful, Kale Mercer. Empathy bonds don't distinguish between curiosity and desire. Maybe they shouldn't. Her eyes glowed faintly in the half-light, the pendant pulsing faster. You're reckless, she whispered. You make it difficult to be careful. She laughed softly, a sound that felt like surrender. Then, before reason could interfere, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was the collision of 2 worlds trying to understand each other through fire. The connection ignited fully. Kale felt everything, her heat, her fear, her fierce pride. And she felt his confusion, hunger, wonder. The bond amplified it all until it was almost unbearable, like being burned alive and reborn at once. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Now, she said quietly, you understand why Zidonians treat emotion as sacred weaponry. And why humans keep finding ways to misuse it, he replied. She smiled, slow, dangerous, utterly radiant. We may yet find balance. The next morning, they stood side by side before the Galactic Council media grid, their scandal reborn as strategy. The Cultural Exchange Initiative had been officially approved for review, and Kale had spent the night drafting speeches that would make philosophers blush. Christie briefed them briskly. You'll present the proposal as mutual respect, no jokes, no flirting, no human charm, Mercer. Define charm. Anything that makes her blush. Impossible, Kira said coolly. Zidonians don't blush. Christie's eyes narrowed. Then whatever that glowing thing your pendant does, no. Kira's mouth curved faintly. Understood. The chamber filled again, hundreds of beings assembled under the great dome of Zio Station. Holographic translations shimmered across the air as Kale stepped forward. His pulse raced. He could feel Kira through the bond, steadying him, calm, deliberate, quietly amused. He began to speak. Every civilization here was once primitive. We all had to decide what it meant to survive. Some chose dominance, some chose order. Humanity chose cooperation. Not because it was easy, because it was the only way to move forward. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He continued, gaining rhythm. To us, equality isn't rebellion, it's recognition. The belief that strength isn't proven by providing or withholding, but by sharing. Kira stepped beside him, her voice seamlessly joining his. And on Zidonia, we believe that provision is not about power, but about commitment, a vow that those who give are bound to protect. Perhaps both truths can coexist. Together, they presented a vision of duality, not competition, but complement. Their words intertwined like their pulses. Even the translators seemed to hesitate, syncing their tones to match the harmony of their cadence. By the time they finished, the hall was silent. Then applause, hesitant at first, then building into a chorus. Even High Counselor Thack, standing at the back, inclined his head ever so slightly. Christie exhaled like someone who had just escaped an airlock. Well, she muttered, "You didn't blow up the galaxy today. I'm proud of you both." Kira looked sideways at Kale. "You see, cooperation works." "It does," he said softly. "So does chemistry." Her pendant flickered, betraying a pulse of emotion. Later, in the quiet aftermath of triumph, they stood again before the viewport of Kale's quarters. Beyond the glass, the great station turned slowly through the starlight. "You did well," Kira said. "We did well," he corrected. She reached for his hand. "This bond will fade in time, but not quickly." "Good," he said. "Maybe that's how understanding starts, by refusing to fade." Her smile this time was soft, genuine. "Be careful, Kale Mercer. If you keep saying things like that, you'll make the galaxy fall in love with you." "Just starting small," he murmured, "one alien at a time." The look she gave him then could have melted a planet. Outside, the lights of Dexio Station flared brighter, as if reflecting the heat between them. Somewhere in the vast digital network, the hashtag #cultural exchange began trending above #real males provide food. And for the first time in recorded interstellar history, scandal had turned into understanding, and understanding into something dangerously close to love. The summons arrived before dawn. Kale's wrist console blinked with the red seal of the Galactic Council, and the message was as cold as the vacuum outside his window. Summoned to appear before the Council, charges, cultural contamination, ideological subversion, violation of interspecies protocol. Christie didn't even wait for him to finish reading. "They were moving fast," she said, pacing the small conference room. "The Traditional Values Coalition has called an emergency session. They claim your cultural exchange initiative is destabilizing social structures across the sector." Kira stood beside him, her face unreadable. The soft glow of her pendant was gone, dimmed deliberately, a Zidonian sign of restraint. "They've turned curiosity into fear," she said quietly. "They always do." "Who's leading the charge?" Kale asked. Elder Vren Christie replied. "Hardliner older than most starships. He once tried to outlaw mixed-species education." Kira's expression darkened. "He's dangerous. To him, tradition is not belief, it's control." Kale straightened his jacket. "Then let's take control back." The council chamber was carved from living crystal, its dome refracting the starlight into rivers of color. Hundreds of delegates filled the tiers, serpentine, insectoid, humanoid, gaseous, each murmuring in their native frequencies. As Kale and Kira entered, the chamber quieted. Every eye turned toward the couple who had somehow made equality go viral. Elder Vren rose from his seat like a specter of authority. His skin was darker than Kira's aged amber, shot through with veins of gold, and his robes shimmered with sigils of lineage. "Council members," he began, voice amplified through the hall, "we gather today to confront infection. A primitive race newly arrived among the stars presumes to teach us morality. This human denies the natural order that males provide and females choose. If such rot spreads, our foundations will crumble." Gasps, nods, and low murmurs rippled through the tiers. Kale felt every gaze like static on his skin. Christie whispered, "Stay calm. We've got data, not just ideals." But before Kale could respond, Vren gestured, and a holographic projection appeared, grainy footage of human diplomats laughing over drinks. "Observe," Vren said, "Earth's envoys mocking Zidonian culture. Can you believe they think males must feed females? Primitive superstition." The chamber erupted in outrage. Reporters leaned forward, lenses whirring. Kira stepped forward, fury flashing in her eyes. "That recording is false." "Convenient claim," Vren sneered. "Do all humans deny evidence when cornered?" Kale clenched his fists. "That's not our embassy. Those aren't even real people the audio's spliced." Vren smiled a slow predator's grin. "Then prove it." Christie was already working furiously on her datapad, her expression shifting from worry to grim satisfaction. She leaned toward Kale. Metadata mismatch. The signatures belong to the Draconid delegation. Their tech leaves a trace in the resonance layer. They forged it, Kale hissed. They've opposed Earth-Sidonia trade from the start. This gives them leverage. He turned back to the council. With permission, I can demonstrate manipulation. The chair, a towering reptilian with translucent scales, tapped her staff. Granted. Christie projected the evidence: digital fingerprints, energy, signature, inconsistencies, and timestamp anomalies glowing in the air. The Draconid ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kira's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Elder Vren's evidence was fed to him by those who fear cooperation. Fear breeds lies, and lies breed division. Her pendant brightened, pulsing in rhythm with her words. Zidonians once believed truth could be measured in light. Let us test that. The pendant's glow expanded, projecting an empathic field across the chamber. Many species could perceive it, a gentle warmth that resonated with sincerity. The council fell silent. Vren's glare wavered. Parlor tricks. No, Kira said, voice steady. Transparency. The chair slammed her staff once. The record shows the evidence falsified. The Draconid delegation will face censure. A wave of noise swept the room, shock, relief, even applause. But Kira wasn't done. She stepped to the center dais, her eyes burning gold. You fear that humanity's idea of equality will erase tradition. I feared that too until I felt it. She turned toward Kale. Through our bond, I saw what equality means to them: not sameness, but choice. Choice without fear, strength without domination. Vren rose again, trembling with rage. You defend contamination, you speak like one of them. Kira's voice softened, yet carried to every corner. Perhaps I am. Perhaps that is the future, not becoming human, but becoming better because of them. The chamber rippled with emotion. Younger delegates whispered among themselves, their bioluminescent markings flickering in sympathy. Then from the rear doors, a voice rang out, firm-aged and unmistakable. Enough. High Counselor Thax entered, robes flowing, eyes sharp. He moved to the center platform. We have witnessed deception and courage. The council must decide whether unity is threat or evolution. He looked at Kale. Human, you began this chaos with ignorance. You may end it with wisdom. Speak. Kale took a breath. His palms were sweating. Through the bond, he felt Kira's calm flow into him, cool water over fire. He faced the sea of species and spoke slowly, deliberately. Every one of you had a first misunderstanding. The first handshake that felt like a threat. The first shared meal that turned into trust. We call them mistakes, but they're the sparks of progress. He gestured toward Kira. I split a bill because on Earth, equality means respect. She was offended because on Zidonia, provision means devotion. Both of us were right and wrong, but together we found something better: understanding. He paused, letting the silence breathe. You can call that contamination if you want. I call it civilization. The hall held its breath. Then somewhere in the upper tiers, applause started, tentative, then spreading like wildfire. Even the chair nodded slowly. Vren tried to speak, but Thax raised a hand. The motion stands. The Cultural Exchange Initiative will proceed under joint supervision. Let the record show that progress outweighs fear. The staff struck the floor with a resonant boom. Decision made. Kale turned to Kira. She exhaled relief, shimmering through the bond like sunlight after rain. You did it, she whispered. We did it. The chair addressed them both. You have reminded this council that difference is not decay. You will lead the first demonstration of your initiative at the upcoming cultural summit. Christie grinned for the first time in days. Congratulations, Mercer. You just rewrote the handbook of diplomacy. Didn't even have to buy dinner this time, he muttered. Kira elbowed him lightly. Careful, they're still listening. Good, he said. Maybe they'll finally learn the value of dessert. As the chamber emptied, Kira lingered near the central platform. The light from her pendant reflected in the crystalline floor, forming twin patterns, one amber, one blue, slowly merging. You realize, she said softly, our bond is now public record. To many, it's proof that emotional union corrupts judgment. Then let's prove them wrong, Kale replied. Let's show them it strengthens it. She looked up at him, eyes fierce and bright. You're willing to keep it, even knowing the risks. Kira, the whole galaxy already knows. Might as well make it official. Her lips curved into that dangerous, glorious smile. You are the most reckless being I have ever met, and you love it. Maybe she'd admitted, or maybe it's just the bond talking. Then I hope it never shuts up. As they walked out of the chamber, the galactic feeds were already updating. Council approves Mercer Doctrine, equality as diplomacy. Human and Zidonian delegates rewrite the rules. But Kale wasn't reading the headlines anymore. He was too busy memorizing the way Kira's hand felt when it brushed against his warm shore alive. Outside, the stars burned brighter than ever, as if the universe itself had leaned closer to listen. 6 months after the trial, Scio station no longer smelled of scandal, but of celebration. Once hostile banners now glowed side by side across the Grand Promenade, the blue-white insignia of Earth entwined with the sun-winged crest of Zidonia. Hollow ribbons drifted through the air, translating the same phrase into 27 languages. Unity and Diversity, the first galactic cultural festival. The corridor floors vibrated faintly with music, part Terran percussion, part Zidonian resonance harp. What had begun as a dinner argument had become policy, movement, and myth. Cale Mercer stood at the observation deck overlooking the festival grounds. Below, thousands of species mingled gas forms in containment fields, swirling past mammalian diplomats and sectoid choirs harmonizing with human jazz ensembles. The air was alive with scents of spice, plasma, ozone laughter. He adjusted the formal jacket of his new uniform navy with silver trim, the Earth's Zidonia Accord emblem stitched over his heart. On his shoulder gleamed a small brooch shaped like two intertwined wings, the friendship pin gifted by Kira herself. "You look uncomfortable," a voice said behind him. He turned, smiling. Ambassador Christie approached, for once not wearing the expression of a woman braced for disaster. "Uncomfortable? I'm just trying not to spill anything on history," Cale said. Christie chuckled. "Enjoy the moment. They're calling this the Mercer Doctrine in Council archives. Equality as diplomacy. You've turned a social faux pas into foreign policy. Guess I finally paid the bill." "And got change back," she quipped. Then softer. "You did good, kid." Cale glanced toward the crowd again. "We did. All of us." "Speaking of we," Christie said, tilting her head toward the promenade, "your partner in chaos is looking for you." Kira Vexnar emerged through the throng like a comet made flesh. Her ceremonial robes shimmered deep green with silver embroidery, cut in traditional Zidonian fashion, but subtly altered two bands of Terran blue woven through the sleeves. Around her neck hung the golden pendant glowing steadily, now neither dimmed nor flaring, a symbol of balance found. When she reached him, the noise of the crowd seemed to fade. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "It's a healthy diplomatic reflex." "Good. You'll need it for the ceremony." "Which part? The speeches, the feast, or the part where I don't faint?" She smiled, eyes bright. "All of them, especially the last." They stood together at the railing, watching the swirl of species below. "Do you realize," Kira said softly, 6 months ago I wanted to strangle you. Only 6. Now," she said, taking his hand, "I want to do something far more reckless." Before he could reply, the station intercom resonated, "All delegates to the Grand Hall for the Feast of Unity." Kira squeezed his fingers. Showtime human. The Grand Hall had been transformed into a cathedral of coexistence. Massive tables formed concentric circles beneath a dome of living light. Some seats floated in zero-G bubbles for aquatic delegates. Others were heated or cooled to alien specifications. At the center stood a single round platform, a symbol that no race sat above another. As Cale and Kira entered, applause rippled through the assembly. High Counselor Thax waited near the central table, his severe face softened by something almost like pride. "Ambassador Mercer, cultural attaché," Vexnar Thax greeted. "Once you were scandal, now you are precedent. Let us see if unity tastes as good as it sounds." Kira inclined her head. "It will, Counselor." The menu was designed by the chef who witnessed our first discussion. "Ah yes," Thax murmured, "the infamous gray chef." Chef Rin, small gray and utterly unflappable, hovered beside an army of multi-species assistants. His 6 fingers danced as blue flames ignited over hovering stoves. "Distinguished guests," he intoned, voice amplified, "tonight's feast represents the first shared sustenance of our united civilizations." With a flourish, he unveiled the first course, Aldebaran flame-seared tentacles served beside Terran sardo bread, the dish that had started everything now reborn as a symbol of reconciliation. Kira leaned toward Cale. "You baked that bread yourself." 12 failed attempts, the 13th rose, lucky number. "Poetic." Zidonians consider 13 a number of transformation. Then we're both superstitious and right. They ate, talked, laughed. Delegates from rival worlds toasted one another. Somewhere near the Vespian table, an avian diplomat tried hot sauce for the first time and burst into delighted song. For the first time since he'd left Earth, Kale felt something like peace. Midway through the feast, High Counselor Thax stood raising his glass of amber firewine. 6 months ago, he said, a misunderstanding over who should pay for dinner nearly shattered decades of diplomacy. Today, that same misunderstanding feeds thousands. Let this remind us offense and enlightenment often share a table. Laughter rolled through the hall, warm and genuine. To cultural differences, Thax declared, may we always find wisdom in them rather than war. Glasses clinked across worlds. Even Elder Vren, seated a few places away, managed a grudging nod before muttering into his drink. Christie leaned toward Kale. You've officially survived the impossible. I suggest you quit before the universe finds another test. Too late, he whispered. There's still the bonding ceremony. Oh God, good luck. The feast ended, but the celebration moved to the central plaza, now transformed into a ring of glowing platforms suspended beneath the open Starview Dome. The station's rotation slowed to give every attendee a perfect view of the cosmos. Kira and Kale stepped onto the main dais. The Gray Chef joined them, acting as officiant, his small frame dwarfed by the galaxy behind him. By the authority of the Galactic Council, Rin proclaimed, we gather to witness the first recognized human-Zidonian union, forged in understanding, sealed in shared sustenance. A hush fell over the plaza. Following Zidonian tradition, Kira lifted a small tray bearing 2 offerings, a piece of the bread Kale had baked, and a bright, crystalline fruit from her homeworld glowing softly. On Zidonia, she said, her voice clear and steady, males provide food to prove devotion. But on Earth, partners share what they have. Today we honor both truths. She broke the bread, offered half to him, and took half of the fruit for herself. Together, she continued, we feed each other. We sustain each other. We create something new. Then she produced a small object, a credit chip, simple silver engraved with both their sigils. On Earth, this represents shared responsibility, she explained to the crowd. On Zidonia, a vow of provision. Combined, it becomes a promise, neither yours nor mine, but ours. She placed it into a transparent ceremonial bowl. Kale followed, adding his own. The 2 chips fused with a pulse of light, forming a single symbol, glowing gold and blue. Through their bond, Kale felt her emotion, warmth, joy, something deeper than pride. The Gray Chef placed his 6-fingered hands over theirs. From misunderstanding comes understanding, he intoned. From different strength. By the Council's decree, this bond is recognized across all member worlds. The crowd erupted in cheers as Kira and Kale sealed the moment with a kiss. For an instant, their pendant and the merged chips blazed like twin suns. Above them, the dome opened to reveal the unfiltered stars, billions of lights cascading across the void. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Hours later, the celebration spilled into every level of the station. Music of 100 cultures wove together into a rhythm no one had ever heard before. Kale and Kira slipped away from the noise, finding refuge on a quiet balcony overlooking the spinning planet below. She leaned against him, the warmth of her skin radiating through the thin fabric of his uniform. I think Elder Vren actually smiled, he said. Careful, she teased. That could be a sign of apocalypse. They both laughed softly. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of engines and distant music filled the silence. You realize, Kira said, finally, your little gesture with the bill has rewritten interstellar law. All because I didn't want to pay for dinner alone, he said. No, she corrected, turning to face him. Because you believed equality could be beautiful. I still do. She rested her forehead against his. Then our work isn't over. Understanding is never finished. It's just fed one meal at a time. A few months later, the story of their bond had become legend. Children on 12 worlds played split the bill, pretending to be brave diplomats. Restaurants offered Mercer menus featuring paired dishes served in equal portions. Even the phrase to Mercer, a situation entered diplomatic slang, meaning to turn disaster into connection. Kale found it both hilarious and terrifying, but when he looked at Kira, calm, fierce, incandescent beside him, he decided he could live with being a verb. One quiet night, they stood together again at the viewport, watching a fleet of new exploration ships depart. Their joint emblem gleamed on every hull. Ready for the next misunderstanding, he asked. Always, she said, that's how civilizations grow. Outside, one ship ignited its engines, streaking into the unknown. Kale slipped an arm around her waist. You know, if splitting the bill can split the galaxy. She smiled, finishing the line they'd said 100 times before. Imagine what sharing a life can do. Their laughter mingled with the soundless light of the stars. And somewhere in the archives of 1,000 worlds, their story began its final entry. What started as a dinner became a doctrine, and what began as offense became the foundation of peace. Humanity's first lesson to the galaxy was simple: understanding doesn't mean surrender. It means sitting at the same table and staying there until you're both full.